I am the owner of a large finance company. For context, I'm only 25, so I don't look like I'm as successful professionally as I actually am. I had started my company initially as part of my college project, but soon I realized that learning practically by operating my own company was worth more than all the book learning I had been doing. While I stayed in college, I put more and more of my focus on my company. It didn't take too long for me to start needing employees. I understood that even though I was doing really well for myself, I needed to hire more experienced employees who already knew how to work in a professional environment and wouldn't need to be spoon fed. I invited many workers who had verifiable experience in the field of finance to come and work for me through LinkedIn. In order to entice them, I did have to set higher salaries, which would be coming out of my own salary, but I knew that it would be worth it in the long run. I also offered many of my college classmates a chance to gain professional experience by interning in my company. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement as it gave my classmates professional experience that they could put on their resumes while I got extra help while my company was growing. Over the next couple of years, my company grew more than I had ever dreamed it would. We actually ended up merging with a large finance company who had been hurt due to our competitive rates. Because my company had the upper hand in all of the negotiations, I retained my position as the CEO and didn't lose any employees in the process. I am fortunate to be able to say that I have made a lot of money over the last few years. Instead of spending it on material things, I decided to invest most of my money. While I did put some of it into the stock market, I invested most of it in various properties around my city. I have rented out all of these properties for commercial as well as housing purposes. One of my employees was retiring and he had invited everyone from the office to spend the weekend at his house out in the country. The house was his wife's family home. Her father is in the oil business, and so he had bought a huge mansion in Rochester which had been passed down to my employee and his wife. My company is located in New York City, so we just had to travel upstate for the retirement party weekend. I was looking forward to spending the weekend relaxing and connecting with my employees outside of work. I informed my employees that I would be hiring a luxury bus to drive us to Rochester. So on Friday, I gave everyone who was invited half the day off and we all got onto the bus at 12 p.m. The ride was very enjoyable and made everyone nostalgic about similar bus rides we all took for school trips. We reached the employee's house in the evening. It was a very large and beautiful house. The grounds were landscaped perfectly and there was a pretty marble and turquoise fountain at the end of the driveway. The mansion was big enough to house all of us very comfortably. A butler came to welcome us into the house. I was looking forward to a luxurious weekend. We reached inside and we were greeted by our coworker. He welcomed us all in and told us that our stuff would be brought to our rooms. He told us that the butler would direct us to our rooms and after we had freshened up, we would all meet in the lobby again for some food and drinks. The butler guided us all to our rooms. I was the last person to be led to my room. When I entered the room meant for me, I realized it was because my employee had given me a larger and more extravagant room. I quickly washed up and headed back downstairs. While I was going downstairs, I ran into a young man coming out of another door. He barged into me. Instead of apologizing, he just looked me up and down and said that I needed to watch where I was going. I didn't know who he was, but I vaguely recognized him. He asked me who I was and why I was inside of his uncle's house. Then I realized that he was the son of another employee. The employee who was retiring had a younger brother who was also one of my employees. To answer his son, I'll call him Jason. I told him that I worked with his uncle. He looked at me, and I guess he must have assumed that I was a junior employee due to my age because he said that he couldn't believe that his uncle had invited lowly employees like me when he had only been allowed to bring 5 friends. I decided not to tell Jason that I was his uncle and father's boss. I thought it would be funny to reveal it later and see the look on his face when he realized how he had treated me. I decided to just go downstairs and mingle with the other guests. While I was talking to some of my employees, I felt my blazer being pulled backwards. I turned around and saw that Jason was wiping his wet hands on my blazer. I was shocked at what he was doing. He just smirked and then I heard some people laughing. I looked to my left and saw what I assume were Jason's friends laughing at the scene. I saw one of my employees open her mouth, presumably to tell Jason who I was. But I shook my head at her. I wanted to see how far Jason was planning to take this just because he thought I was the lowly junior employee. I snatched my blazer out of his hands. I told him that it was clear from his behavior that he hadn't learned any manners growing up. He looked angry when he heard what I had said and said that I had no right to talk to him that way. He said that if I didn't say sorry to him, then he would complain to me to his uncle and have me thrown out of the house in the middle of the night. He also said that his uncle and his father were very good friends with the CEO of my company and that he could tell them to get me fired without any issues. The fact that he was threatening to get me fired made me want to laugh, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I just walked away. I could hear Jason calling after me, but I didn't bother looking back. It was hot, so I took my coat off and hung it on the coat rack. I spent the rest of the evening dancing and enjoying my employee's retirement party. The food was delicious, and the music was perfect for dancing to. Many people had also taken advantage of the pool and the jacuzzi. I went inside to grab my blazer, as it had gotten cold outdoors, but I didn't see it hanging where I had left it. I looked for it everywhere inside, but I couldn't find it. I went back outside when I saw that someone had laid my coat on the wet floor near the pool and was using it to keep their sneakers from getting wet. I was upset at the rudeness of the action. I went and stood near my coat and raised my voice to ask who had chosen to use my coat as a mat for their shoes. Everyone was looking at me and no one said anything until I heard some people laughing in the pool. I turned and saw that it was Jason and his friends. Jason was the one who piped up and said that my cheap coat deserved to be used as a mat for his very expensive sneakers. He said that he didn't understand why I was upset because my blazer clearly wasn't anything of value because there was no way I could afford anything made out of good quality material. Before I could respond, Jason's father stepped forward and told Jason to shut up because he was embarrassing him. Jason just said that it wasn't a big deal if he treated me badly because I was obviously just a random low-ranking employee who had been given a pity invite. Jason's dad told him to stop talking immediately. He told him that the person that he had been insulting and disrespecting was actually the CEO of the company. Jason laughed, assuming that his dad was joking, but when he saw how serious everyone was, he stopped laughing. Jason's uncle had also joined us at this point, and he told Jason to get out of the pool and apologize to me for his behavior. Jason came over to me and said that he didn't know that I was the CEO, which is why he had behaved badly. I noticed that he never actually said that he was sorry. I told him that it shouldn't matter whether I was the CEO or not because he didn't have the right to treat anyone the way he had treated me. Jason got defensive right away and said that if I had just told him that I was the CEO, then he wouldn't have said anything. He said that it was my fault because I could have stopped him at any point. Jason's father then told him that he was ashamed of how he was conducting himself. He told him that I was the last person who should be treated that way because of everything that I had done for their family. Jason just scoffed and said that I had clearly just taken over my dad's company and so I didn't need to lord it over them. I was done listening to Jason, so I told him that I had built my company from the ground up. I told him that when his uncle had come to me and asked me to give his brother who had been laid off a job, I agreed. I told him that he and his dad lived in my house that I had rented to them for a very low price. It was hilarious to see Jason realize that he was insulting the person who was responsible for the roof over his head. Jason's dad stepped in and told him that he should be embarrassed about how he was the same age as me but wasting his life playing video games and partying with his friends. He told him that this was the last straw and that he had to find a job and move out of the house by the end of the month. Jason started complaining, but Jason's uncle stopped him and told him to gather his friends and leave right away because he didn't deserve to attend a party meant for adults. After Jason and his friends left, both Jason's uncle and his father apologized to me, but I told them that there was no need for that. I told them to put it out of their minds and enjoy the party. It's been a month now since the party, and Jason's father told me that Jason had found a job and moved out. Hopefully this will make him more of a mature person. So, this happened to me when I was younger. I immigrated from Jamaica to the US when I was around 10 or 11 years old. It was my first time flying on a plane and I was flying alone. I had to say goodbye to my mom in the airport and I boarded by myself. My grandmother paid for my seat And she paid for a window seat. That way I wouldn't feel too anxious on the plane and I could look out and see what was going on outside. To this day, I'm thankful that she got that for me because it really did help me feel better about flying alone. I had a window seat. The middle seat was empty and the aisle seat was taken by a man. He said to me, "Change with me so that I can have the window seat and you can have the aisle seat." I said, "No." And then he said to me, "You're not even using the window seat properly. You're not looking out the window." I still said no because I felt a sort of attachment to the seat because it was bought for me to sit in, so I still said no. He grumbled to himself and then sat there quietly. Soon I had to use the bathroom, so I got up and I said, "Excuse me." I passed him and went to go to the bathroom. But I got scared because I thought that, in my little kid brain, I was going to get sucked into the toilet, so I thought to myself, better not. And would you guess what I came back to? You guessed it, he was in my seat. So I stood there in the middle of the walkway and said, "Excuse me, sir, you're in my seat." At this point, he doesn't even look at me and mumbled out, "You're not even using the window." So I looked at him and I said, to get a little bit crazy, and I said, "You're in my seat, please move." He didn't want to move, so I just stood in the walkway. Soon, a flight attendant came up to me and told me that I needed to take a seat. I said, "I wish I could, but he's in it." At first, the flight attendant thought that I was lying, and the man said it's my seat, so then I almost had to cry and said that no, it's my seat. The flight attendant asked for my ticket, and she asked for his ticket. I gave her mine, and he slowly gave her his. She took one look at the tickets and then looked at the man and said, "Sir, you're going to have to move. This is her seat." I kid you not. Like, seriously? Seriously. The guy looked at the flight attendant and tried to argue that I was just a little kid and I didn't properly know how to use a window seat, and it was being wasted on me, and that he wanted to have the window seat. The flight attendant stopped and looked at him and said, "Sir, she won't sit unless you move from her seat." And he said that he wants a window seat, and he's got one. So the flight attendant looked around the plane and said, "So I'm going to move you another chair that has a window, and you can give this back to her." He then tried to say that I should go find another seat and he'll keep this one. And the flight attendant told him that, "Listen, if you don't move, we're going to have to go back to Jamaica." So then he just got up and followed the flight attendant, and she told me to go sit down. After I took my seat and finished the flight in silence, after we landed, all the unaccompanied minors were walking with the flight crew out the tarmac for our parents to pick us up. The flight attendant came up to me and told me that you were being very rude on the plane and I shouldn't have done that. Then proceeded to tell me that she won't tell my parents that I was being rude on the plane, and I looked at her and I said to her, "Please tell them because I didn't do anything wrong." And she just looked at me and I looked at her, and she kept pushing. I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that man, and I'll never forget that flight attendant. They can all suck it. Welcome to America, I guess. I'll make it clear from the start here that I had no involvement in this, nor did I want my cousin to do it because I wasn't trying to provoke evil Mama Bear. I know a lot of you have been hoping something like this would happen. I'm only posting this now because another situation happened not long after this, and I wanted to make sure that it was over first. Last week, my cousin told me that she combed through my Reddit post and was inspired to prank evil Mama Bear with the pizza. And she only went for the two pizza toppings EMB hates the most: pineapple and anchovies. She told me that she called around town and found a place that serves anchovies as a topping. And then she ordered her evil masterpiece and prepaid with a generous tip to have it sent to EMB's house with a card that said, "Thinking about you," sent with it. She told me that she waited at a neighbor's house across the street to watch from their living room window. She waited and watched as the pizza delivery person showed up with said pizza. There was a moment of back and forth, and cousin couldn't hear anything because she was across the street and inside a house without an open window. But she said that EMB picked up the card, smiled, then took the pizza and slammed the door in the delivery person's face. I guess the moment she heard it was free, that was all that she could think of, and took it without even looking in the box or offering a tip. About a minute later, she came storming back outside with the pizza box in hand and chucked it like a frisbee out in the middle of the street. Cousin said that she was fuming so much that she could have spontaneously combusted at any moment. She then stomped her way back into the house. That's where I thought the story ended, but nope, my cousin wasn't done yet. The neighbor who lived across the street has security cameras that picked up the whole thing. So they went over to EMB's house and rang the doorbell continuously until she finally answered. And they told her that she needed to pick up the mess that she just made in the street, or they'd give the CCTV footage to the police and she'd be cited for littering. EMB came trudging back outside wearing gloves and carrying a trash bag. Then she bagged up the pizza, threw it into her garbage can, and then gave the middle finger to the neighbor's house. I know all this because I was shown a copy of parts of the CCTV video and my cousin called me laughing right after she pulled this off. I can't deny that this made me laugh quite a bit, but I think the odds were pretty fair that EMB thought I was responsible because something else happened over the weekend.